Wendy Mandy, thank you for coming to join me on Under the Skin. I'm very happy to finally meet you.
Same here.
So, I want to talk to you, I suppose, about healing, because I suppose that the work you do is healing work. Is that correct?
It is. It's in the bracket of healing work.
What do you describe the work you do as, may I ask?
If first of all, we have to understand that the work I do is with frequency. So a frequency in the quantum field. And so I move energy about. And my two main tools are 5-element acupuncture, which is the acupuncture of the Chinese court, and was the acupuncture of the emperor. And it treats the fundamental essence of somebody. So I'm treating the terrain rather than the syndrome or the symptom. The symptom will go away because you're treating the real cause of it. And the shamanic work, I mean, the word shaman has been slightly too much bandied about.
Has it? I've been banding it about a bit.
It is a bit of a bandy about. But I think, I don't call myself a shaman, but people have started to call me a shaman. I don't know what else to call me. But a shaman is someone who walks between worlds and can see energy and will take out scratches on the sort of CD of your energy field that are keeping you back. So you're taking out energetic patterns from the system that keep repeating themselves in people's lives. And although it sounds peculiar, I use a rattle to close my left brain down to see your energy field with my right brain. I will then track what I think is going on, and then take that out, and then balance the frequency with sound.
So the rattle is for you rather than for the person you're treating?
No, not necessarily, because the rattle gets me into an altered state, but it's actually a tool of moving frequency about. And also the person very often feels stuff coming off them. I mean, most of the time they can feel that something's going on, that I've got some kind of hoover out and I'm hoovering stuff up or moving stuff.
We just had a treatment. If you're wondering what that noise is, that's the door being opened. Lovely Charlie bringing us a coffee each, and Bear, the opportunist that he is, coming into the room, but he's left again. I just had a treatment with you, Wendy Mandy, as you obviously know because you were there, but for people listening. And you did the 5-point acupuncture.
5-element.
5-element acupuncture and the rattling. And it was firstly my observation with the rattling. When it was moving from different points around me, like it was to my left, to my right, above me, beside me, wherever, it felt like a sort of a kind of sensory hypnosis in that the point of focus was being continually moved and shifted. And I could see how that would affect perception and alter patterns in the same way as there's a natural, I guess whenever I talk about this kind of thing, I am sort of conscious of a wall of skepticism that I'm always trying to scale or puncture in others, because I'm interested in academic study, I'm interested in science, but I'm also interested in God, and I'm also interested in techniques to change the world. And it's likely that these techniques are not going to come from within our existing systems. They're going to come from marginalized, maligned ideas. So that's why I'm very curious about the kind of work that you do that I guess some people may see as mysterious.
Well, of course. I've been doing this work for 40 years, and this is the first time I feel that people are open enough to hear this kind of work. I've kept under the radar. If you look me up online, you'll find very little. And I have decided to talk about this kind of work because science is now proving it. So the fact that you're a frequency in the quantum field is now being proven. We know that a particle can be in two places at once. We know that the particle and the observer are not separate. And Gabor Mate, my hero, is scientifically proving that patterns that occur between conception and 3 years old are going to affect us for the rest of our lives. I've learnt all of my work from marginalised Indigenous people who have always understood energy, but unfortunately religion didn't understand and made them sound like savages. And people like Pinker and Freud have said that we are savages unless we're civilized. But actually, to me, civilization has done the opposite.
Yeah, it makes sense actually in a way when you consider that the impact of socializing, industrializing and civilizing forces brings your attention more and more to the material and the practical. And of course, I'm very grateful for technological advancement, medicinal advancement, and many of the incredible phenomena and expertise brought by science and medicine. But I can see that a kind of, what do I want to call it, reductivist physics has prevented us from seeing that the physical world is only one aspect of being that we interface with, that not everything can be reduced to physics.
Well,
Certainly
the
not as
thing
we
is
understand
that unfortunately science in the main has separated everything. And everything is connected. And now we're coming back to understanding that everything is connected. So everybody in the indigenous world realized that we are connected. And that one of the things I'm trying to do at the moment is finish a book called The Cooperation of not the survival. What was Darwin's expression?
Survival of the fittest.
The survival of the fittest. The survival of cooperation. Conversations on remembering our right relationship to each other and nature. In fact, Darwin was maligned because he would never have said it was the survival of the fittest. And as you know, to help colonialism, they decided to say that it was the fittest. And Pinker decided to say that chimpanzees are somehow murderous people and that we're descended from them. But I don't believe that. I think we used to remember that we are all connected. Therefore, to destroy another is to destroy ourselves. To destroy nature is to destroy ourselves. And that science has unfortunately separated everything and is now remembering that everything's connected. And I think it seems very depressing on the planet today, but I'm not depressed at all. I think the boat is turning. And I think that a lot of people are beginning to remember things. My Samburu elder, the Samburu are part of the Maasai, the elders are saying that the ear is coming back. In other words, somehow something's happening to our brains that we are remembering collectively that we can have peace, we can have happiness, we don't have to be lonely, we don't have to destroy the planet. That all of these things don't have to be like that. That there is a returning to remembering that we are all one. We are all expressions of everything, and that nature and ourselves are interwoven.
Yes, it's certainly true and accepted within academia, I mean in the field of philosophy, that many of the narratives that were presented to us as objective are now being challenged and undermined, many of which come from post-Enlightenment scientific disciplines. Things that were presumed to be objectively true are being looked at differently. And when I reflect on the Vedic understanding of this age as being the Kali Yurt, an age of darkness, I can see how that equates to us being in a time of material, a time where we are thinking only about what we can receive through the senses rather than investigating what is it that our senses are connected to, what is receiving the senses. Wendy, how did you get into becoming a shamanic healer?
So how did I get into it? I think that as a small child, I spent a lot of time in nature. I was born in Malaysia, and then I spent the first 5 years in Nigeria. And the relationship I had with the local people was very, very loving. I think anyone who tells you that they've had an African childhood or they've had local people looking after them, there's a presence that these people have. They know how to be present with children. So they make you feel heard and seen and allowed. And so
why were you there? What was your family doing?
So my father was in the army. So they were there. But my parents were quite sort of bohemian types, really. They would allow me to play outside. They weren't restrictive. And they weren't racist people, but they were colonial. So I had to come to terms with the fact that these people were servants, but that they gave me all the love, which obviously influenced me for the rest of my life. That, where was the true love coming from, and the relationship to each other and nature. So that had a profound effect on my little self.
Who in particular do you recall that you felt very loved by?
All of them. Every single person that worked for my parents. From the cook to the gardener to the women that held me against their wonderful soft breasts. All of them. The singing, the smells, the food, the whole thing is only a good memory. And the worst thing was leaving and coming back to cold, brown, grey, restrictive England.
Really? Is that how you felt?
Oh, terrible. I didn't really feel okay again until I hit the Portobello Road when I was 15. The smells, the sounds, the everything. And in a way, I've stayed living around the Portobello Road since.
What do you feel that you missed? What was your life like between the period where you left your colonial yet native life and moved back to England? What was that period like?
Well, I was thrust into a Christian village. So
where?
On the borders of Dorset, Wiltshire and Hampshire. So I had a good countryside life. I had ponies. I stayed out in the garden. I made little houses in the garden. I connected to nature. And my parents weren't restrictive, so I could play. But I was incredibly aware of class structures, of divisions, of separateness. It felt very separate.
Yes.
I was very aware that the village children went to a different school to my school. All these kind of separations started to really, really affect me. And I didn't like school. I didn't really like any of it. But luckily for me, I hit the late 60s. And the first sign of freedom was the sound of the music coming out of the Bakelite radio. And me dancing to the first sounds of Indigenous music of some sort coming through. Jazz, Jerry Lee Lewis, anyone. And me dancing around. And my father saying, "Can you turn that racket off?" And me saying, "No, it's the sound of freedom."
So that's what you think that the sort of cultural revolution of the 60s, which I don't know loads about, but I feel like, that the beats were significant, a kind of fusion with Eastern mysticism came through culturally, and there was a sense of freedom and cultural revolution, which obviously inevitably became repackaged and commercialized.
When it first came, it felt very pure. And something happened. It was, I went on the march on Saturday, and it was a very heartwarming event. I mean, really, on Saturday in London, because it made me feel so glad to be a Londoner, because in a way I feel a Londoner. It was such a peaceful, incredible march. It was extraordinary. In front of me was a placard with a man saying, he had a pencil in his hand, and he said, I'm just away from writing a very strong letter. I am now very cross." So British. I didn't see any bad behaviour. I didn't see anything. And that, coming into London in the late 60s felt like you were in the epicenter of the universe, and everything was happening. Music, clothes, freedom, some kind of freedom from the restrictions of Victorian England was happening. There was you could mix classes, colours. Suddenly I felt ageless, genderless and colourless. Suddenly all these divisions seemed to be beaten down again.
But it turned out to be a bracketed period, like a moment, whilst I would say, you know, some of the ideas from the 60s abide. That kind of new age movement, I think, is commonly regarded as being a little bit wishy-washy, rootless, and sort of lacking in potency.
The whole thing went into what I call spiritual bypass. Loads went off to India. People were taking LSD and seeing other worlds, but what happened is that they hadn't done the work on themselves, so of course none of it worked. And part of what we might talk about is my work is understanding and remembering Indigenous knowledge to create a new way of living now. And the hippies definitely failed, and you can understand why, because they didn't work on their internal self. They didn't work on they wanted a quick trip to enlightenment without understanding what that really means.
I think all of us want that, because we're sort of in a sense of being schooled that there are accessible solutions. This sort of phenomena of immediacy and medication has only been exacerbated when you think about the subsequent changes since then. We live in an age where information is at our fingertips, where relationships are regarded as commodities, where sex is regarded as a commodity, the sort of commodification of all things. So this idea of resurrecting Indigenous knowledge, I personally don't regard as a kind of nostalgic hankering after the idea of noble savagery. I see it as a kind of return home, a reinvestigation and a reinstantiation of necessary cultural roots that remind us of what our relationship is to one another and to the planet.
Totally. I think lots of things have happened on the planet that we're not sure about. I mean, if you look at enough Gaia TV, you might get some clue as to whether or not aliens came to this planet, who were the gods, etc. But what we do know is that 12,000 years ago, we somehow came out of we came into the agricultural revolution and started owning each other and land and civilizing ourselves. And something happened when you own land and you own each other. Something peculiar happens. And we've had 12,000 years of that. And the Indigenous or Aboriginal people that I have visited that haven't been taken over by Christianity or Islam, they have this incredible relationship to the land and each other that binds them together in a different frequency that we've got to try to remember. And that's really my life's work, is to try to translate that into modern day, because we can't save these tribes. They're disappearing. And it's part of the big cycles of life. However, I think we can use technology, we can use all sorts of things to make a very different world where we have a different way of relating to each other and nature that doesn't destroy the planet and make ourselves feel lonely. I think loneliness is the big affliction that I treat every day.
Yeah, there's a lot of loneliness going on.
So much.
Is people a bit embarrassed and ashamed to feel lonely, evidently?
Yes, it's when people admit to me that they feel lonely, and I say, of course you do. It would be peculiar if you didn't, because our society makes us lonely. Then they feel some kind of relief, and then we start talking about how they can start to live differently.
How can we, in a post-civilized world, ever hope to emulate the structures that human beings lived in this real or imagined utopia where we were all connected to one another and the planet? How can we, with the many powerful influences of commerce, government, our own inbuilt prejudices, how can we ever overcome them? And what systems of living would you imagine could replace them?
Okay, so I have a property outside Bath, and in my treatment room I have this little notice that says, I've learned so much from my mistakes, I'm thinking of making a few more. So I don't have any easy answers, and I think I've made most mistakes that can be made by a human being. But what I've realized is that if you're going to live with a group of people and combat loneliness and live in right relationship to nature and each other, you have to work on yourself. So with the nature, we can't own land. Like, this is a beautiful piece of land I'm sitting on now. And you're the custodian of this land for the moment. And in this land are other energies that might seem far-fetched, but they're the spirits of the trees and the plants and the elementals. And we now know that trees and plants have a language. There's so much science going on about that. I have a little box from musicoftheplants.com in Italy, and you put electrodes on the roots and the leaves, and you can play music with the plants. So I have this avocado plant that I grew from an avocado. It was in the compost, so we planted it. And I came back from a trip recently, and the avocado plant looked not very happy.
Really?
So we put the electrodes on it, and when they're singing to you or you're playing music, they go beep, 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 beep. And this one was going beep, beep, beep.
It was a dour little avocado.
It was very upset. So I moved it next to some other plants, kind of fussed around its leaves, gave it a bit of water. We put the electrodes back on, and it went beep, 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 beep. And that's a real demonstration of energy that helps people understand, because you can say trees talk, and a tree hugger, a spiritual person, can hug a tree and feel it, but your average bloke needs something a bit more. And this is the kind of technology that's happening that can help people understand.
To sort of translate.
Exactly.
Because, like a lot of people, when we talk about sort of quantum physics and frequencies and energy, people that I listen to that are, quantum physicists say, no, the sort of spiritual people are misusing this information and trying to make it all woo-woo and cute and nice. And say, like, something like with those plants and, like, hearing the sounds of it. I feel like there's a sort of tendency, more like an ideology, that is sort of determined to make everything sort of joyless and materialist, and no, we're not all one, and we can explain that in a way that doesn't lead to... See, like, what I recognise is that many scientific disciplines and endeavours, in spite of their claim for objectivity, are financially underwritten by a particular type of ideology, and that ideology is the preservation of existing power structures, and those existing power structures require that we don't look at alternative systems to live with one another, don't look at alternative ways of sharing power, don't look at a different way of treating the planet. So I would countenance, decry, confront the claim of mainstream science to be objective, not the process of analysing data objectively. Of course, that that aspect of science is absolutely brilliant, but many of the conclusions that are drawn are not unbiased. They are directing us towards particular types of behaviour and empowering particular institutions and interests.
Absolutely. I actually bought some of it to you today, but I forgot to show you, of myself walking with the Maasai elder in the bush.
Where are the Maasai?
The ones that I know in the northern Kenya, up in Laikipia. And I'm walking with him in the bush, and he is explaining how they see the world, that the world is talking to you the whole time. Now, a scientist would say no, but when you walk with them and the bird calls or the snake goes across your path, they are absolutely tuned in with their right brain to their environment talking to them the whole time. Now, we know that dolphins talk to each other. We know that elephants talk to each other. And as I said, we now know that trees are talking. But these people have not lost that language. And that language is there, but you have to open your hearts and your eyes to see that language. So I wanted to record him before they die completely, because they're putting a massive pipeline, roads, and normal stuff. Now, I used to just want to save Indigenous tribes, but now I think, okay, this is too difficult, and I've got to go in the cycles of life. They're disappearing, but we can make new tribes. Look at my jumper, gangs of love. We can. And I've thought really carefully about how we can try to do
you
that.
can't use your jumper in an argument.
And with just watching them, what are the things that we can do where we can live more happily with each other as they do? How can our children laugh more, play more? And what do we do about couples, codependent, sex? I mean, we could do a lot of podcasts on how we can take the lessons from these people, and that's what I'm writing about at the moment, and translate that properly into new ways of living. I mean, yesterday I read an interesting article on people in London living cooperatively. So they have the main space, but they all have their own bathroom and bedroom and kitchen, and their offspring can share the space. And perhaps it's a single mum, but there's a man there that is a mentor or father at the time. I think in London they will have to have new ways of living. Down in Bath, we have my house, which is a 5-bedroomed house, and my family come and go, and we have the big shared space of the sitting room and kitchen, and then everyone else has their own pod outside of their own kitchen, their own bathroom, their own sitting room, so that you can have time to yourself, or you can come and join in. And you don't have washing up rotas, because washing up rotas need to come from someone making a list or being the boss. What you have is an understanding that everybody is in charge of the space. Everybody. So the little kid is going to go, if they remember, will go and put something in the recycling. Because, kids remember sometimes and other times, but they know that that's going to go in the recycling. That the plants need watering. When you're in a shared space where you are custodian of that space, you don't walk past a plant that's dying and think, well, Daisy should water that. You water it.
What you're describing in political terms, is like anarchism, like that, because anarchism is, as I understand, not chaotic as it's presumed to be by many of its detractors, but that human beings left alone will organise themselves into systems without an oppressive external governing force.
Absolutely, like the march on Saturday. I did not see one policeman, and it was completely peaceful.
We're cutting back. They're giving it all to private security firms these days.
I know.
But Wendy Mandy, were these your bath time utopia there outside in the countryside, which I'm very keen to come and visit with the pod and all that. I like it, and I think you're probably right that we should be emulating communal models. But some people would say that we do require hierarchy and structure in order to function. I know that a lot of the times you hear that from people that benefit from there being hierarchies and structures. But the other thing, this is me, even as a person that's I consider myself, I hope I am, open to new ideas. I say, don't the Indigenous tribes typically have some sort of structure, elders, leaders, etc.?
No, don't have leaders. You have elders. You have elders.
Now listen, I've seen Lion King, and it's Mustafa who's clearly in charge.
You have elders.
Yeah.
Okay, so the elders are elders because they've been through initiation and they've been through stuff. And being an elder is a very responsible setup. So you always have to have older people who are elders and babies and everyone around. But the main thing is that you have worked on yourself, so you know when you're transferring rubbish onto another person, basically. You've got to work on yourself, so that, because what happens with these leaders in the cults, or those leaders, power got hold of them. So I always say oh God, all those hippie
David
ones.
Koresh, that wasn't good. Charles Manson, he blew it.
All of
Jonestown, that was silly. The Hallybop lot. Oh.
Well, even Osho and all that lot.
People get excited when the cult forms. We mustn't make that mistake.
No, we must not make that mistake. So I think that
you're saying money corrupts, and you're going to say something about power corrupting.
So money talks, wealth whispers, true wealth is silent. And it's the same with power. if you're a powerful person, so for example with child rearing, you don't need rules to bring a child up, but the child needs to know that you know who you are. So you remember with your little one, I said, I'm really, really sorry that I'm taking your daddy away to do this work. Really, we should be playing with you, because I told her the truth, but I was absolutely sure we were going to come in here. Even if she'd cried, I would have cuddled her and said, yeah, it's really miserable that we're not going to stay playing with you and we're going to work. She would tune in to my certainty and be at peace. It's exactly the same in a group of people. If everybody knows who they are and they're not transferring rubbish onto each other.
Not needing to vampire off one another or parasite or blame.
Yeah, because the classic codependent relationship that unfortunately most families are based on.
Yeah. It's the norm. Codependency is the norm.
Yeah, my friend Jane.
Explain what codependency means a bit.
Codependency is when... So a codependent is, if you're okay, I'm okay. A non-codependent is, I can see you're not okay, but I'm okay, and I would like to know how you'd like me to help you find out why you're not okay, but I'm not going to fix you. So I remain in my centre with compassion for your not okayness, but I'm neither triggered by it, nor do I try and fix it. I just keep space. Now, most couples, unfortunately, and it's not their fault, start eating each other alive because they spend far too much time around each other, turning each other into grandparent, sister, mother, father, daughter. Too many roles for one person. Whereas if you have a collective of people, which in a way before the great Hollywood dream, where you've got the house with the 2.2 children behind a picket fence that has now overwhelmed the world, you had a collection of people around each other, whether it was the village, whatever it was. There were lots of people to rely on. That in the codependent couple, it's so easy to start arguing because you've got to do everything. And, you know, I've seen the most amazing couples deteriorate and they love each other, but it's the architecture they live in that is very destructive.
But these tribes of which you are so enamored,
Yes.
they do have systems like, see this, like, you know, like if, because here's what I'm always thinking in the back of my mind: how are we gonna sort this shit out? Right? I'm not doing these podcasts and having these chats just for the good of my health, though I think it is good.
No,
for
that's
me
why I'm sitting here, because you get shit done.
So, like, but what I'm thinking is that that those tribes do have customs and traditions and stories and narratives and ceremonies and rituals and information that is passed on. It's not a bloody free for all. It's not like, you know, so and even say, for example, we're going to, right, why don't we start a community of 75 to 100 people? Why don't we work out what we think is the maximum upper limit of a number of people that can successfully live in a community before it topples over? Like in chimpanzee societies at around 150, it splits into two because there's too much conflict and they can't organise into successful hierarchies. So like in Yuval Noah Harari's book, he estimates that human beings are sort of accustomed to living in groups of 75 to 100. Say we started trying to do that stuff, like let's have like a pod, right? I reckon it would, like, well, it's a question, it's not what I reckon. Do you think it would just be enough to go, right, we all live here and we operate democratically, or do you think you'd have to go, no one's fuck everyone?
There's a key to living like this, and it's called ceremony.
Go on then.
Okay, so the way that Indigenous people lived before religion, their relationship to nature was so sacred that they would make ceremonies to connect themselves to nature. So there are many ceremonies around the conception of a child, the child growing in the womb, around the birth of a child, and around the naming of the child, and around the rearing of the child. Every single day is a ceremony to each other and nature. We have routines. They have
rituals without
rhythm.
meaning.
Exactly. We have routines. So, and they have rhythm and ceremony. When you bring ceremony into your life, there's a wonderful book by Sombufo Somé, who was married to Malidoma Patrice Somé of the Dagara tribe. And I'll buy you a copy because it's a book of ceremonies of an Indigenous village. And it all makes incredible sense. So
Well, some of the ones they do.
they have ceremonies. For example, in the Dagara tribe, and it's in every indigenous tribe, they don't have gay people. Although they have gay people, they just don't call them gay. They call them gatekeepers. So you have the kind of alpha males. I'd say you're an alpha male.
Thank you. You can come back.
And the alpha male would probably have many, many wives and many, many children.
Keep talking.
And then they have the men in the middle that we call gay. But actually they're gatekeepers. So they're gatekeepers to keep the spirit of heaven and earth, male and female, in balance in the tribe. And sometimes if the alpha male is being a little bit more aggressive perhaps about something,
you might have had a difficult day.
Exactly. The gatekeepers would be doing ceremonies to the spirits, either burning resin or making fires, or they just keep a peaceful thing going on. And yes, they do sleep with each other. The men sleep with the men and the women with the women. But all sexuality in pre-religious society was a connection between the sexuality and the spirituality through dancing. If you see any old pictures of African tribes, when they're doing the dancing, they're falling down in ecstasy of the Kundalini rising. They are dancing with each other in what seems like a very sensual, erotic way, but it's not separating sexuality from spirituality. And
do you think the problem is that there's so many interesting things I want to pick up on there. One is because I heard recently, listening to some Michel Foucault stuff on a podcast called Philosophize This, which I like. He talks about how it's a relatively recent phenomena to even categorize types of sexuality. It's like Absolutely. It's not sort of even really strictly necessary, and I find that's a quite liberating idea. I like what you're saying, how ceremony and ritual, a kind of communal way of relating to the sacred events in our lives, acknowledging the sacred, whether it is the birth or naming of a child, or presumably things that are led by nature, like the onset of spring, which we're currently going through in the UK, or whatever. Like there's ceremonies
Absolutely.
and rituals, marriage, death, etc. We're tied together with nature. We acknowledge ourselves as part of it. And I like what you said there about rituals instead of the ritual is a suggestion that there is meaning and beauty and connection beyond that which we can commonly understand with only using one aspect of our consciousness and mind.
Absolutely. As Gabor Mate said in a podcast I read recently, he gives people Prozac when they really, really need it, in order for them to even be able to be with us. But fundamentally, he knows that these people who are depressed have to understand something deeper about their meaningfulness in this reality.
Yes.
And that's key. That's, in a way, in my treatment is a kind of ceremony to connect you to connect your emotional self, your physical self, your intellectual self, and consciousness, of which you are. You are consciousness in a body. Now, the skeptics will say, what does she mean by that? I can only say that's what I mean. If you've seen a dead person, where did the frequency go? What is that? When the heart stops beating and the body is still, where is that frequency? And a bit like plastic, you might throw it away, but where does it go? Nothing actually ever disappears. Exactly. Nothing ever disappears.
And our man Gabor Mate said, the reason that we extract the spiritual because we couldn't treat people that way if they had souls, e.g. homelessness, refugees, etc. Once we start acknowledging the sacred in human life, then it becomes more difficult to treat people as just units of energy to be used in accordance with the requirements of a social order, pre-existing social order. All right, I like that bit. All right, so now here's another point come up there with that ecstatic tribal dancing around the fire there and everyone getting off with each other. What about you mentioned the sort of power of Kundalini. Now, Kundalini...
the point there is that they're not getting off with each other, they're getting off in a group.
With the Lord.
They're getting off in a group.
They're getting off in a group with the...
It's not, I like you, so I'm going to take you off and have sex with you in a corner. It's a group energy.
Yeah, that's nicer, Wendy.
And also, they get married, it was religion that called it marriage. They choose and I've got a beautiful poem about the Himba tribe, that when a man and a woman know, or the woman decides that a child is coming through, she knows which man it's going to come through. And it's not about marriage, it's about the child being conceived. Now, we are so far away from that, because it's about the child that matters. It's not about you and me, babe, and then we'll make a sort of a small us, which will then dress in clothes that look like us.
Oh.
It's not like that for them.
I get you. But like, my point is this. Look, there's a sort of a couple of centuries at least of programming to reconsider before people look beyond even the limitations of nuclear family. And perhaps one of the resources that could be useful in helping people to become liberated from the restrictions of their programming is access to the transcendent power of the Kundalini. Talk to me about that Kundalini. I've done Kundalini yoga before. I have a feeling that there's sort of energy in me somewhere that I can't always access, but I would like to access more. Tell me what you mean by Kundalini.
Well, I think that I discovered Kundalini yoga about 20 years ago, and I actually don't like yoga very much, mainly because I'm not very good at it. But when I first did Kundalini yoga, I thought, this is very interesting, because most of us somehow have got stuck in our base chakras. And so a lot of sex addiction, pornography is all about the stuck energy that's below the waist only and is not being brought up through the heart, like the Africans doing their incredible dance around the fire. And so Kundalini yoga is a technology, if you like, that releases stuck sexual energy without having to go masturbate on the porn.
You're lovely. I've got this tattoo here on my finger that is based on a drawing by Carl Jung of the coronated serpent. The Kundalini starts in the lower chakra, in the Muladhara and Svatisthana in the kiln there, and rises up and becomes crowned in the higher higher chakras. So like, yeah, so this energy, these energies that are used to help us procreate, survive, fight, fly, whatever we need to do. These energies can be utilized through practice to contribute to our connection to higher consciousness.
Totally. We have to free the Kundalini from being trapped in the base chakra and use it to go up and open our hearts. Now, there's an awful lot being investigated around the heart being a very important part of our body. Heart math, opening the heart.
Like it's got a brain in it or
exactly.
something.
It's all going out. I mean, again, this is science that's very helpful, because the indigenous person will always say, the white man needs to open his heart again. And, well, what does that mean? The heart is this kind of thing that sits in my chest. But no, it's not. It's a heart brain, like we now know about the gut brain. And
there's sort of different types of consciousness held in the heart and in the stomach.
Exactly. And now the science around that is proving what these people have always known. Yeah. And we say, I felt it in my gut. My heart hurts. He's a pain in the neck. I've got too much on my shoulders. Huh. I was frozen with fear. I mean, like Shakespeare, she vented her spleen. He was livery today. I mean, the body talks.
Yeah, like so that we have an intuitive understanding which we express through language, that there are different types of consciousness and different types of energy held in the body, but we've reduced it to a monotheistic brain-centered model, perhaps to emulate the sort of theological model of one God, meaning one single central dominant force, rather than a pantheistic idea of power being spread throughout all relationships and throughout all phenomena.
Absolutely.
Have a little bit of water and a little bit of coffee. I'm really enjoying our conversation. It's brilliant. Right, so we talked about Kundalini. Now, you do this shamanism. I've had some of it done on me by you. That means then, what about plant medicines and all that?
Okay. I think the reason that plant medicines have come onto the general airwaves is because I know that planet Earth is a conscious being of her own within the universe. And I think it's time for us to wake up, and that the plants help us wake up. And the reason they help us wake up is that when you take plant medicine, and that's not taking drugs, what happens with plant medicine is that you start to see and hear and feel and know things beyond the programming of your brain from childhood to now, through school, through your parents or whatever. You start to tap into a collective unconscious of knowing. And of course, you know, like all wonderful things, it's going to be slightly abused. I mean, tobacco was a wonderful discovery. The tobacco plant's incredible. Look what we've done to tobacco. Marijuana is an incredible plant, but look what we've done to that.
What do you mean, we keep overdoing it?
Well, I think they're going to copy it soon. I mean, I think these things have to be taken in ceremony with great respect. You can't get off your head every night and not do your schoolwork.
That's what the mistake of when I've had my only psychedelic experiences were, you know, LSD as basically a child, you know, like sort of 16, 17 years old.
Terrible idea. You know, all of these things have always been taken in ceremony with great respect.
Who's going to teach everyone?
We are.
So just write a few little systems of like, okay, this is how to live, this is how to live together, this is how to undergo the plant medicine. You done some then?
Plant medicine, yes, all of them.
Ooh, can you talk? Can we have a little bit of a dictionary of plant medicines? One I'm interested, obviously, in Mother Ayahuasca. I'm interested in that sort of some of that bark stuff they do in Africa.
Okay, so like all kids, the first one I discovered was tobacco. Okay, luckily for me, I wasn't not that interested. So, but I could tell the power of the nicotine. I could tell the power of the tobacco. I managed when I was pretty young to come across a Northern Native America and do the peace pipe, which was extremely different.
What was in
done
that?
In ceremony. Tobacco.
It's just tobacco.
Just done differently.
We get a good,
from a fag behind the bicycle shed.
What's the buzz like off of the peace pipe?
It makes you talk. It's the talk. It makes you relax and speak. Then there was cannabis, and I always sort of knew to take cannabis with respect. I think I've always been quite hooked in, so I'm a bit of a lightweight. I don't need much. Then I was extremely fortunate to find a tribe called the Kogi tribe, who are the last of the Tairona civilization, who went to right up onto the Alto Plano in Colombia. And it was an extraordinary experience. And I took something called yahe.
What's that like? It sounds bloody good, just its name.
It's amazing. It's a kind of ayahuasca. And in that trip, which I won't go on about.
Why?
Well, we've got loads to talk about because there's a lot to say that I could say. But basically, I got downloaded with everything I'm talking about now 40 odd years ago, which was very difficult because I came back knowing all this stuff and there was no one to talk to. And this is the first time I'm talking to the public.
It must be a right relief to get it off your chest.
It is. I talk in my treatment room and I talk to my very close friends, but I don't really feel the world has been ready. But basically I got downloaded with this. So it was an extraordinary experience. And then I went to see a tribe called the Yawanawa tribe, and I went many, many times and took ayahuasca.
Where are they, the Yawanawa?
In Acre, which is in Brazil, between Peru and Brazil. What'd
you get out of that experience?
Just more understanding of our right relationship to each other and nature.
These experiences, once you started moving into the sort of psychedelic as opposed to psychoactive experience, did you find that there was a uniformity or repeated themes in the experience, as in, oh my God, this is the same information in a different way?
The information was always the same, that Mother Nature is our mother, that she's always okay, it's just us that isn't okay. I got two messages. One is that she will survive us, but we are meant to be doing what we're doing. So a message that everything is perfect in a perfect universe. It is as it should be. However, we all have a collective and individual destiny that we must live out. So in a nutshell, loads of other stuff, obviously. But I learned an awful lot from the plant medicines. I then took some more ayahuasca in kind of more sort of English scenes.
Was that right?
No, because I wanted to do it to see, because fundamentally the shaman goes into the forest. He does the diet, which means that he has very little food and only ayahuasca and tobacco for quite a long time, up to 3 years sometimes. He He really goes deep into himself. And communes with the forest. He then picks the ayahuasca himself. He makes the brew. He then makes up songs that translate between the forest and himself.
Like that plant beeper.
That's right. Then he then gives out the ayahuasca and sings the songs that connect the people to the forest, and they heal. Sometimes by purging, but not always. And the real ayahuasca is not fizz pop bing wang dub ju. It's not that hallucinogenic as they take in Ibiza and all those places. It can be, but it's more messages. It's more realizations.
Yeah.
Then Iboga.
What do you mean by that? And what sort of can you describe to me the transmission process, as in what it feels like in your head? Like, is it like language, or is it I suddenly now know that
it's a knowing. It's a knowing, and it's almost as though the mother ayahuasca is talking to you. She's gonna gives you a message. So I'll give you an example. This was my last ayahuasca trip with the Yawanawa. There were no hallucinations, nothing. Just a voice that came from a Dalek. Do you remember the Daleks?
Yeah, I know those guys.
I will exterminate you, that one. And you remember there was a nicer one. Do you remember?
What do you mean there was a nicer one? They were a terrible bunch, weren't they?
They were a pretty terrible bunch.
But there was one that was like, look, I'm just doing this for a job. I didn't want to be a Dalek,
anyway,
to be honest.
The recesses of my imagination dreamed up a Dalek.
Oh, you made him up. Well, I'm not going to know him then if you made him up.
We all make everything up because we're all one, aren't we? Everything's made up by us in a collective universe of understanding. And this Dalek said, in a Dalek tone, "We are taking you up another level. You will need more compassion." And it would not stop for 6 hours.
Kept saying that? Oh,
yeah, I was
hell.
going, what, for my children? Oh, for the earth, my clients, my friends,
And the Dalek's still piping up during this.
It's still going on. And I finally
think it was a Dalek.
And God knows.
Annoying.
Anyway, I finally went, oh, for myself. And the voice stopped. And from that,
it was being deliberately annoying.
If I'm not truly compassionate for myself, how the hell can I be compassionate properly for others? If I don't, in other words, self-care and walk the walk myself, how the hell am I going to...
You got better at that then, have you?
Much better.
Tell me some of your techniques for self-love, because I know a lot of people listening to this right now struggle to love themselves and be compassionate.
My mother did teach me one really good thing.
Go on.
Before I went to sleep, she told me to write down all the things that had upset and annoyed me in the day.
Step 10.
And because she was an aristocrat, she said, and then you throw it in the waste paper basket.
Oh, God. That's actually a good tip from your mum.
I would say that, you can burn it or you do whatever you're going to do, but throw it away, tear it up, go to sleep. In the morning, write a gratitude list. Also, about all the things 11. You're grateful for, because that puts you in a better resonance. And when you're feeling really sorry for yourself, try and get up and do something. And when you're really struggling...
What type of thing? For someone else or for yourself?
Oh, no. For someone else or for yourself.
Don't make no difference.
It doesn't matter. You've just got to get into life. So you could feed
Some people too lethargic.
No. They can do it. They can get their feet on the ground.
Get up.
Get up.
Get out of the bed.
And if you're an addict and you're really struggling, you've got to write a structure for every day, one day at a time.
They need help, these addicts, don't they, though, these ones?
Yeah, because you've got to have a structure every day, one day at a time. One day at a time. So, you can do anything from make yourself a nice drink, go for a run, do something that starts the day off.
We treat ourselves with love. That's nice. Okay, I like that. That's some good tips. All right, so that's this Dalek came into your consciousness and
Yes.
kept repetitively telling you to be compassionate to yourself. To keep going with more psychedelic information.
Okay, so that was that. And then Iboga is,
That's somewhere in Africa, is it?
yes, from the Bwiti tribe.
Uh-huh.
And Iboga is extremely good, particularly for heroin addicts. And it does affect the synapses in the brain and can correct really severe addiction that affects your brain. And the way that Iboga works is it's rather like sitting with a film of all of the things in your life that have gone wrong.
Oh,
And
cool.
you
I
kind
don't
of
want to go through that again.
and you kind of watch it and it writes itself. It's very difficult to explain. It's not pleasant, but it's extremely effective.
I like the sound of that, Iboga. Hey, when you were just doing that treatment on me, did you feel addicty energy?
To be honest, I think you're very powerful and you don't know what the hell to do with it.
Ah, the old power, eh?
And you basically are learning how to deal with power. So because you were powerful, you just thought, I'll have more everything. I told you you'd be an alpha in the rainforest with 60 wives. But you just need to deal with your power and channel it like you are now.
So no, it wasn't like, oh, this feels like a smackhead.
No, you're just too Moorish.
Yeah, I've always liked the
Yeah,
more.
you just got to deal with the Moorishness
Gotta
and
deal with
channel
that.
the power into anything you can think of.
Service.
Service.
All right then. So what's the next one after the what was it called? Bogadar.
Okay, so Iboga.
Iboga.
Okay, acacia,
What's
which
that?
is the Australian or African. You know the acacia
Everyone's
tree.
got one. All of these tribes have all got one.
Of course.
I wonder what they used to do in England, like in
In
out
England,
Albany.
mushrooms.
Right.
I haven't got to them
psilocybin.
yet.
Oh.
Nice little fellas. Okay, so acacia, which has something else in it different to ayahuasca, EMG. I can't remember what the word is, but acacia is amazing. So they tune you into the symbols of the nature of where these plants grow. And what we have in England and Europe and all over the world, but particularly in England, we have the mushroom. And the thing about psilocybin is I can't remember the actual numbers, but I think it's 98% non-polluting to people who are addicts, that it's safe, basically. And I can't remember the science around why mushrooms are such a part of our DNA, but they are. And they hold the secrets, and they always have done. If you go back through ancient English writing, there's always mushrooms about.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you mean, like Chaucer, Shakespeare?
All of them. Yeah. It would have been mushrooms. Because psilocybin opens you up to the nature in this land. If you have mushrooms from the place where they're growing, it opens you up to a conversation with the nature. Also,
do you think that even addicts like me in recovery can safely use, in the right ceremonial conditions, plant medicine?
100%.
That concludes the podcast. See you in about 10 years when I come back.
What's interesting to me is that last November I went to a place called Rhythmia, which is a kind of weird place that's a sort of...
Sounds weird.
Looks like a military installation and a bad Hilton hotel right in the middle of very beautiful jungle of Costa Rica. But the reason it works is that it's a very safe place. They medically give you tests first. They do transformational breathing, colonics, good food, all of that, around 3 ceremonies that happen. And I was very impressed, even though I felt I was being watched by the CIA in some way, because it just felt so peculiar. This place was so unnatural. It's a good place to send people who need to feel safe. And the man who runs it, for example, was one of the worst addicts ever. I mean, when he describes how he was, extraordinary. And even though when I looked at him, I could see it was a legitimate way still for him to get off his head.
Yeah.
I have to admire what he's done. Because he's created something that really transforms people's lives.
Yeah, good on him.
Yeah.
Setting up his Hilton hotel.
But the point is, it has to be done ceremonially, properly. And it's obviously, we're now abusing ayahuasca. We're probably going to abuse Iboga because we don't seem to know what not to abuse. Well,
because I say this, the external grid always makes you physicalise and materialise. People worry about fundamentalist bloody religions without realising we've already got one. The fundamentalist religion of individualisation and materialism, seeing everything through the lens as if you're like some sort of thing wrapped in a bag of skin and all that matters is what you put in your mouth and what you fuck, instead of recognising that absolute unity.
Absolutely. I mean, look what we did to the coca leaf. I forgot the coca leaf because I took that with the kogi.
Hold on a minute. What do you mean? Cocaine, right?
Yeah.
Oh, no, that got out of control.
I mean,
we've ruined that.
Totally.
We're like children.
Yeah, we ruin things, but we ruin things because we don't understand how to do things ceremonially. We've ruined sex.
That's been spoiled.
Yeah, everything.
That's gone now.
And the food. Look what we've done to food.
Ruined it. What about? Have you done DMT?
Oh yeah.
Well, tell me about that.
DMT. Okay, so DMT is the ingredient in ayahuasca taken out. Again, has to be done in ceremony. But it's
who with? Who's doing ceremonies for synthesized drugs that have been extracted from a plant? I mean, who's designed it? You?
No, not me.
Right.
No, I haven't designed it. But basically, if it's done in ceremony, it's a quite good way of someone who's too scared to go to Peru and vomit for 8 hours to understand the brief opening that can happen to their consciousness in a safe place.
I've watched like videos obsessively about people like experiences on DMT where they describe sort of archetypal experiences, meetings with deities after meeting sort of machine elves, passing through geometric zones, meeting sort of aspects of consciousness embodied in various ways, receiving divine truths, often not able to communicate them back again and put them into words. I saw this wicked Peruvian shaman describing like, yeah, I did that DMT, and how it relates to my typical experience is it felt like a condensation of it. And I've watched some wicked stuff on it.
A DMT, I think, is a very useful tool to open up consciousness, but it still has to be done in ceremony. And, a lot of kids are up in the stone circle at Glastonbury, off their heads on DMT. And the thing about being a shaman, if I'm going to call myself a shaman, is that if you leave your body out of ceremony, you are going to collect a lot of negative energies and possibly bring them back into your body and not know what to do with them. Yeah. So it's frankly, anything out of ceremony, including sex, is not good for us.
So ceremony is like, while we're right, I get it, because we see ourselves as primarily physical beings, but we're primarily spiritual beings. So while interacting in the physical world, we should be continually using ceremony to remind ourselves of our priority as spiritual beings.
Absolutely. I would say we are consciousness, soul, in a human body, not a human body having a soul.
Yeah.
So absolutely. That is what we have to remember. We need to remember that we are sacred and that we are in a body, and being in a body is incredible.
It makes sense, isn't it? Because when things happen to people that inadvertently for a moment make them feel sacred, whether it is a sexual experience, a narcotic experience, watching football and a brilliant late goal, when people are like, oh my God, it feels like people want that forever. And a reductivist way of looking at it, no, this hormone was released and that hormone was released, but temporarily you felt at one. I read this shamanic study once on the sort of analysis of the word love and its various incarnations throughout language, and they said the most common thing you could break it down to mean was union. That's what people were saying. You might love a football team, you might love a pair of shoes, you might love a person, but like ultimately it's a sense of, I want to be one with this, I am one with this is me, I am this.
Absolutely, you've got it. That's what we're looking for. We want to remember that we are all connected. We want to remember that, and we want to remember that wonderful feeling.
For us to experience this sense of connection in community is going to, I believe, I don't know if I'm right because I'm guessing, devolution of power. I feel that power has become too centralized. I'm talking about political power, but political power be a manifestation of other forms of power. So, evidently you went on one of the Brexit marches. I query both the motivations for remain and leave. I feel that most things that happen in the political field are sort of warped manifestations of people's inability to cope with living divorced from spiritual connection and from ceremony and from meaning and from connection. So, but like, I feel that like one of the things, because I speak to a lot of political type people as well as therapists, I've had a couple of people I suppose are in healer type categories. But my sense is that when you're talking about how these things come together, people living in community, having a relationship with the transcendent, acknowledging oneness, bringing ceremony back into life, you're talking about clear principles. We're not talking about just woo woo, let's sit around and do drugs and sort of muck about in some petals. We're talking about sort of serious ideas. But I query how, now that we live in a sort of a globalized information-based society, how can we incorporate all of these sort of seemingly fractious and opposing concepts, within the world of religion, so much diversity and opposition, within the world of politics, so much diversity and opposition, within the world of sexuality. It feels to me that there needs to be a kind of, people need to find their tribe, live in their tribe. Each tribe should be able to live how it wants to, in accordance with certain principles that no one transgresses, along the lines of respect for individual freedoms and group freedoms and the sanctity of the planet.
Absolutely. So I totally understand that a lot of Brexiters who live in the countryside basically want to live in a way that small is beautiful. Schumacher, small is beautiful, because they have an innate understanding that a small group of people, like the town of Frome, for example, has its own management, that you want to manage a smaller group of people, that you don't want some person outside of your small group to manage you. I understand that. However, the reason that Brexit to me doesn't make sense is that I understand that Italy wants to be Italy, Spain wants to be Spain, Poland wants to be Poland, France wants to be France. However, we have to relate to each other. We have to keep relating, because and I can see why people don't want to be run by Europe. But if we don't relate to each other in Europe, we're going to be run over by a much bigger truck.
What do you feel like US sort of imperialism?
Yeah, that there are these huge trucks around us, and that the smaller trucks have got to kind of talk to each other.
I think, all right, but
if that makes sense, but
it does make sense. I just for a moment thought we went from like the list of drugs or plant medicines and their effects. Well, let's do Brexit now. Now that we've done the sort of
the thing is that
top
obviously
10 hits from psychedelia.
Small is beautiful works. I mean, Schumacher was a genius, and
I don't know nothing about Schumacher. What is that?
He was someone. He wrote a book called Small is Beautiful, and that whole thing about 75 people. Outside of that, what we call civilization then gets top heavy. It gets annoying. It's all of the things that people don't instinctively like. And, don't let's talk about Brexit, but I can understand both sides, as you can, because the whole thing doesn't work.
Yeah, because I understand both sides of everything.
Exactly. But the whole thing doesn't work, does it? I mean, what I enjoyed about the march was I enjoyed the peace. I enjoyed everybody being together. I enjoyed the fact that all those people, there were more than 1 million, were walking together with a purpose together in a peaceful way. It felt nice. It felt good. And that all those clubs and pubs in that area were opening their doors for people to have a pee, to have a drink. It felt as though everybody was together.
I used to love a protest. I used to go sort of May Day marches, all sorts of things like that. But I kind of used to like the feeling of, oh my God, these structures can be toppled. I used to get myself in all sorts of silly scrapes as a
but that's an important part of your learning. It's an incredibly important part. I mean, we have to learn these things, and we have to keep inquiring, keep asking, working out how we can live together in a better way. And I know that we can, and you know that we can.
Definitely. But there's probably, this is the other thing I feel like we have to enable people to express their uniqueness and simultaneously acknowledge our own limitations. It seems that you and I are primarily interested in the reintroduction of the sacred into a post-secular, late advanced capitalist society. How do people re-engage with the sacred? How do people understand their own masculinity, femininity, the combination of both of those things that exist within all of us? But there are people that are bloody good at understanding how machines work and how to organise societies and how to organise resources. And I like the idea of your sort of pods and communal living where people somehow get round to doing the washing up. I mean, my sense would have to be that there should be someone exempted from washing up who says, you make sure the bloody washing ups get done, you lot.
If we were in the same place, I'd say, Russell, do the fucking washing up.
I mean, I would do it anyway.
I know
I'd be no
would.
trouble, honestly. I'll be no trouble in this cult.
I read this morning a piece about AI, which I thought was interesting, because obviously in these new societies, we're not going to go back to only eating yogurt.
No.
Obviously, we have to introduce technology, we have to introduce AI and everything else, because we are going to be living it. We're not going to be living away from the world. Definitely one of the things that I have decided in Bath that works is that the children stay in one place and the adults can go and work for 2 or 3 days, because the children are being looked after by the collective.
Yes.
And the adults can get away, because one of the things that happens when you set up some community and then on top of a mountain in Wales is you go stir crazy.
Right, you go nuts.
Okay? Because we're too stimulated.
We've been civilised this way.
I'm too stimulated. I go mad.
What do you have to do? Pop to Portobello Road and go to the cinema?
Well, you have to have
a bacon sandwich.
Yeah, exactly. You have to have stimulation. So these adults can come and go, but the children and the land and the chickens and all the rest of it are there as the basis. And then the adults can come and go. And therefore they don't become bored with each other. They don't bicker. They're stimulated and they bring stimulation back in. And the whole thing remains like that river. It's flowing. It's not stagnant.
Important.
Yeah.
Wendy Mandy, is there anything else that you want to say? Because I think we've covered loads and loads of stuff. Let me see if we covered every single thing on this sheet. Spiritual mentors and teachers. Do you want to give props or mention any of your spiritual mentors or teachers, other than that fella that you was walking around with in the Maasai's? Only person that's had a look in.
I've had many, but we can talk about that another time. Mentors are very important. I only heard today that you'd written a book called Mentors.
I did write that. It was good, it was.
Yeah.
I wrote it.
Yeah.
It's all been written.
Yeah, mentors are very important.
All right, I feel like we've talked about everything. We'll carry on with our relationship, shall we?
Yeah.
Thanks very much for coming on, and thanks for the treatment. I feel like there was a bit when you were doing the stabbing where I thought, this is actually, because my daughter said I should only give you a light treatment, because if we're doing the podcast after, you might, be too fuzzy or lost or out there. And I went, listen, love. Just hit me with your best shot, all right? I can handle a buzz. But there was a bit when you were stabbing me in the chest, and I was thinking, oh no, actually, this might take me out there. But as it turned out, it went quite well, didn't it?
I hope so.
I'm very happy.
I am.
Cheers.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks for coming. It's so lovely to meet you.
And you.
Thanks for watching this podcast and going all the way to the end of it. Would you so kind as to click the bell? It might not be there, because we're over there. And subscribing, so that we can infiltrate your serenity and peace of mind with jangling bells and buzzes. Thank you.